welcome to Increase Your Profit with Translation Sales. Thank you for tuning in to the Self-Publishing Advice Conference. It's geared up to be a great event, and this is geared up to be a great session. So in this session, we're going to talk about translation sales, foreign rights, why those are important, why you should consider them. And we have two experts here, Margot Weissman and Monica Meehan of DropCap Agency, and they're here to educate us about this and the importance of this topic. So I'm Michael Laurent. I'm Ally's Outreach Manager. I'm really just moderating this session. This will be a great conversation between these two, and we're going to ask some questions that will hopefully illuminate the rights licensing process. Okay, so why don't we go with introductions? Margot, do you want to start?
Sure. Thanks so much. I'm Margot Weissman. I'm the Director of Business Development at DropCap, and I mostly deal with DropCap Marketplace, which is our rights marketplace we'll talk much more about. I was a book editor for 12 years and then caught the publishing startup bug and came to work for DropCap.
All right. Monica?
Thanks, Michael. It's great to be here. And yes, I'm Monica Meehan. I've worked in rights or the publishing world for over 25 years and in rights for most of those years in big and small companies, starting as a rights manager and working up to rights director. I'm currently one of the rights directors, one of the rights agents here at DropCap, and I'm delighted to speak a bit more about rights today.
So thank you, Monica. And the reason we wanted to have this conversation between you two is because Margot, you're a rights expert. You helped author one of Ally's partner guides to help get benefits for Ally members, explaining the benefits and how authors can leverage foreign rights. And Monica, as a rights agent, we thought it would be valuable to hear from your perspective as well. And so to kick this off, why don't we just set the table with just kind of some basics of foreign rights for those authors that maybe aren't familiar with this at all. Margot, first question is, what are foreign rights and why should authors pay attention to them?
Well, Monica will have much deeper expertise. As she mentioned, she's been in the rights world for 30 years, but I also think it helps to get more layman's terms as to why it's important. When you publish a book, say you're publishing a book in the United States or in the UK or wherever you live, you don't just have domestic rights to your book. You have international rights. And a lot of authors don't even think about the ways that they might be able to exploit some of those rights and take their book global. And it can really create a lot of extra revenue sources. Monica, I don't know if you want to go a little deeper.
Sure. Yeah. And as well as great revenue streams that you wouldn't necessarily get otherwise. As agents, we are the experts in this world and we have contacts all over the world. So I'm not plugging having an agent, but it really helps to know who's a legitimate potential buyer, publisher, and we can navigate that for you on your behalf. And it's also a great, almost like a calling card. So if you're a business person who's speaking at an event and you can say you've published in Korea or in French language or German, it's a really interesting conversation starter, and it also helps propel you into the global marketplace with your book. So it's just the start of many different opportunities around the world.
Great. So Monica, what are some of the different types of foreign rights?
Yeah, so we call kind of a blanket term foreign rights, but it can also mean that we sell English language rights, for example. I'll go into that in a bit more detail, but foreign rights are basically any language rights that will go into translation. And we see it by language as opposed to by country. So if you're selling Spanish language rights, then you might dissect it into Spanish South America or Spanish world, which would cover the entire Spanish-speaking world, or just Europe. So they're dissected that way. And then rights themselves can be print, as in book rights, audio, ebook. And most of those rights are now a particular publisher will ask to get all of those rights and hopefully use those. Sometimes they're sold off independently, but for the most part, the trend is that it's the umbrella of rights that include all of those and some subsidiary rights as well, if they ask for them, like book club or special editions, that sort of thing.
Okay. Yeah, that's helpful. So really, it's helpful to think about your book as like this bundle of rights, right? So
that's a good way of looking at it.
You put it really well that, you're not just selling Spanish rights. There's South America, there's Spain, there's all sorts of different rights within Spanish as well.
Exactly.
That I think is important to call out.
Or German, covers Austria, Switzerland, that sort of thing. French, same French Canada, French Europe, French world. And then I just also want to quickly explain English language rights. I mean, they don't go under foreign language because most of our publishers that we represent English will be the first originating language. But we can also sell off those rights and sell to a UK publisher, just UK rights, or UK and Commonwealth, or if the indie publisher is ultimately willing to give up their North American language rights in English, we can also approach mainstream publishers for English once the indie publisher's book has been out in the market for a while. I can give you an example of that later on, but those are also some really valuable rights and can be very profitable as well.
Okay, great. So I want to ask about DropCap Marketplace and what that is. And Margot, can you explain that and how DropCap Marketplace helps authors with this process?
Yeah, absolutely. DropCap Marketplace is a rights marketplace for indie authors and small and mid-sized publishers. So in a traditional publishing scenario, if, for instance, you're an author publishing with a big 5 publisher, or a much larger publisher, they might have a whole foreign rights department. They might have the infrastructure to buy all the rights to your book. They might buy world rights in every language, every territory, and then they might go out and try to exploit those rights. Or if you're working with a literary agent and you don't sell world rights, say you just sell US, Canada rights to a publisher, and you keep all the rest of the rights, your literary agent might go and try to make deals with publishers in other parts of the world. But if you are a publisher working without an agent or without a publisher with a sub-rights department, how do you go about taking your book global? And that's kind of the problem we sought to solve, as we wanted to remove the barrier for indie authors and publishers to get licenses in other territories. And I kind of sometimes call it like online dating for rights. So DropCap Marketplace, anyone can sign up and list their book. And we have a matchmaking algorithm that ensures that your book will be shown to the buyers who are most likely to love it based on their buying criteria. And it gives you the ability to create other revenue streams and see your book in other parts of the world where otherwise there would kind of be no avenue to do so. If you're not already working with an agent or working with a publisher with a sub-rights department, if you've chosen to publish yourself for whatever reason, if you want to maintain autonomy and have more control of your project, there was really no tool or method in place for authors to seek out foreign rights licenses. And we wanted to change that.
And to go run with the online analogy, we as the platform are kind of protecting those people from dubious characters, so to speak. So Margot often sends me something, is this a legitimate request, or publisher or agent, co-agent in other parts of the world. And so the book isn't out there sort of in the world. It's really being protected with under the umbrella of the publishing, a safe publishing space kind of thing.
Yeah, we have over 2,700 rights buyers all over the world that are using DropCap Marketplace, and they're all vetted. I mean, they mostly come from Monica's sphere of people she's worked with over her decades in the business, and we're always adding new buyers, but it'll often come through the door of Monica or our other agent, Allison, finding people they want to work with. And the marketplace is open in that anyone can search it. So you, Michael, or anyone could go to dropcapmarketplace.com and browse some of the titles we have. But in order to engage with the title or inquire about it or download a copy of the PDF, you have to be registered. So we know that all of the buyers who are browsing our titles are legitimate publishers.
Great. Yeah, and that's absolutely critical, right? Because with foreign rights, sometimes you alluded to it, and I think all of us on this call would be concerned about scams, right? And things that we've heard stories of authors, unfortunately, who have been taken advantage of, and that's great to hear that you've got those checks and balances in place.
And I think also conversely, there are authors that have ignored requests and, I got a request from China and I thought it was something suspicious, so I just deleted it. And it can be a really good lead and a big publisher that we work with. So we also want to make sure those opportunities are taken advantage of.
That's a great point, Monica. Yeah. And I wanted to ask you, Monica, so let's say I'm an author and I post my book on the Dropcap Marketplace. As an agent, what are you looking for in a manuscript?
Well, I think in fiction or nonfiction, obviously something that's extremely well written, that is key. And in fiction, I think fiction is so personalized. So then something being well written is basically all you need, not all you need, but it's, an interesting story and something that's compelling. For nonfiction, not only good writing, but somebody who's an expert in his or her field is really important. And also all the kind of bells and whistles that come with it. So if they've had a lot of social media exposure or endorsements from their peers, something that's, if it's just at manuscript stage, it won't be reviewed yet. But something that just seems that it will really work well globally, and that has a strong message and that sort of appeals to the zeitgeist. And I think those are the key elements for good writing or good potential in a manuscript.
Okay. So talk to me a little bit about the process that authors should follow when they're approaching an agent and they're wanting to pitch. What does that look like? What are some of the things that you like to see and that make authors successful in that endeavor?
Well, Margot, do you want to speak to that in terms of Dropcap Marketplace, or I can add a few things?
Yeah, we can both. Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about Dropcap Marketplace, and then you can talk about your experience as well.
Sure.
We try to make the marketplace really intuitive and user friendly. So it's pretty easy to register and to add a book. All you need is an ISBN or an ASIN. And we use a verified third-party API to pull your metadata into the marketplace. So if you have metadata that you've already composed that exists, out there on the internet, a book description, your author bio, that will be pulled in. But I would say definitely make sure your metadata is on point. Your book description is one of the most important promotional tools that you have for catching rights buyers' attention. Your cover is also important. If you get a foreign rights deal, the publisher you're working with in whatever country is going to want to do their own publication and their own cover. However, your cover being visually appealing can only help the discovery of your book. Anyone can list their book on Dropcap Marketplace, so we're not curating or creating any sort of application process. We want it to be totally democratic. But our matchmaking algorithm will favor books that have certain criteria that will make them more appealing to rights buyers. For example, Monica was saying something that has global appeal. If your book is very niche or extremely focused in the US, if it's about the history of Nebraska or something that maybe people in other countries won't be interested in, you might not see traction. But if your book has a theme or a topic that has universal appeal and is very topical and is in the zeitgeist, the algorithm kind of does the work for you of making sure it's visible to the right people. So at least in terms of the marketplace, I would focus on the things that are in your control, make sure your book description is awesome, get as visually appealing and professional as a cover as you can, and make sure to fill out the awards and endorsement section. So we have a section where certainly you can put awards and any good reviews, but also just any positive notice you've gotten. If you were on a TV show, if your book was, in the top 100 on Amazon one day, like in 2022 or something, like add that. Anything that's kind of like a seal of approval or positive notice for your book.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic overview, and I can't add too much more, but at DropCap, we've already inherited the books, so we're not necessarily vetting them, but they come from the publishers that we represent and any publishers that come over or authors from DropCap Marketplace. But what I can add that's valuable to our buyers, our 2,700 plus buyers, is really everything that Margot covered. A strong cover, make sure your author bio is really tight. The nice thing about our platform is that it's live. So if you have any endorsements or awards that have come up in real time, you can add those, and 2 seconds later they'll be online. So nothing is static. So always keeping your profile and anything about your book up to date is really key. Anything that's positive that's happened as it happens. So and good covers, as Margot said. I can only reiterate that that's the first thing somebody will see. So if it looks like you put a lot of work into it and it kind of excites people or generates interest, that's the first start to opening the page.
So that's good. That's all great. And I want to transition. I'm going to flip that question on its head a little bit. What are some mistakes that you see authors making when licensing their rights and or using the marketplace platform? Margot, I can start with you.
Yeah, I would say not really a mistake necessarily, but something that it would behoove authors to kind of be really educated about is genre and who your reader is. So I talk to a lot of authors before they sign up for the marketplace or after they've signed up. I'm always meeting with authors to help them get the most out of the platform and answer their questions. And I've definitely had conversations with authors where they have said something like, well, my book isn't like any other book, or it defies categorization. So we have categories as part of the platform that you can choose to ascribe to your book, such as, like, if it's fiction, it might be romance, it might be thriller. If it's nonfiction, it might be business or personal development. And they say like, my book doesn't fall into any of these categories, or it actually belongs to like dozens of these very disparate, very different seeming categories because it's so unique. And on the one hand, yes, like every book that someone writes is incredibly unique. Only that person, only that author could have written that book. But part of being an authorpreneur is being fluent in the business of book buying a little bit, and knowing that categories and genre and who your reader are like really important aspects of selling your book and making sure it finds the right reader. So even if you feel that your book defies categorization because it's not like anything that's ever been written before, trying to use the familiar language of categories and genre to help put it in a box that people will understand can be very valuable.
Really approaching your book. I mean, it is a product, it's a creative product, but it is one in the end. So you don't need to be cute or in your author bio, so-and-so lives with her dog and her gerbil kind of thing, unless it's a book about a dog and a gerbil. But I think just being...
I'd read that book.
Yes, it's kind of a cute book. But just to be elegant, eloquent, sophisticated, and very concise. And the editors around the world who are considering your book are exactly that. They're sophisticated readers. They see stuff all the time. So they just kind of want factual information and the appearance of somebody doing a lot of research on the topic that they're writing about.
Are there particular platforms where an author has success on that translate nicely into transitioning into foreign rights sales? Do agents look at that?
I think agents these days live on Amazon for Amazon reviews, Goodreads, TikTok, BookTok. Yeah, I think in the past that wasn't as important, but now that social media is everywhere and reviews are so important in the originating language, that's something an editor will definitely consider, as well as, and our platform is great for this. We also built within the algorithm what's trending and what has recently sold in other markets. So if there's an editor in Portugal seeing where another title has sold around the world and they notice it sold in Spain or France, that will definitely draw interest. And it's one of those, let's see what everybody else is buying kind of mentalities. So that's important as well. Yeah. And that's a great part of our platform, that we can really see where things are trending and where they've sold, also, again, in real time.
Now I want to transition a little bit. So we've talked about the marketplace and posting your book and some of the pitfalls and successes that authors have in pitching. Let's say, I've got my book on the marketplace. I've got an agent that's interested. Monica, what are your tips on the negotiation process? What does that look like? What should one expect? And what tips can you offer?
Well, if we're the ones negotiating on their behalf, I think one tip is to be patient. That, somebody might say, oh, there's been interest in Japan. Do you have results yet? So this is a big process. There's lots of editors and co-agents and agents involved. So if they can just sort of relax and know that we're doing everything behind the scenes we can, because it's to everybody's advantage to get the book licensed in that particular territory. So I think just knowing that you're in good hands and having a little faith and trust is always very helpful. What else, Margot? Is there anything you could add?
Yeah, so one thing I think is kind of cool about Dropcat Marketplace is that it's agnostic. So we want to give authors the option of making their books available to foreign rights buyers and the option of engaging representation if they receive an inquiry. So if a Dropcat Marketplace user receives an inquiry and they either don't have representation or they're just overwhelmed with other things and don't want to deal with negotiations and contracts and royalties themselves, they always have the option to have Monica or other agent Allison do the deal for them, but they're not required to do so. So we also have authors who maybe have other agents or have representation through their publisher, but they want the extra visibility and extra marketing boost that Dropcat Marketplace gives them. So this isn't necessarily advice during the negotiation process, but more like an interesting aspect of how the marketplace works when it comes to negotiations, and that it could be useful, whether you have representation or not.
Yeah, and that actually is a good point, that if you do not have representation and we let you know that there's been an offer made, these editors globally see so many books, so many titles. It's a really exciting thing that somebody's book has been chosen over the 20 million other books they're seeing. And in that sense, we're the ones that need to be patient, but we also want the author to act quickly and say, sure, yeah, let's go for it. And, trust the process and really know that it takes a lot to get a book seen and then an offer made. So in that sense, an author should act quickly and make a decision and let us know one way or another whether they'd like to go forward with it. And certainly that's their choice. But to get a book published in another language is a pretty big deal and very exciting.
Yeah, I think it might have been you who said this once, Monica, in a meeting or in a talk we were doing, where you said it'd be so much easier for an editor to buy a book in their country,
right? Yes,
already in their language. And so when an editor has reached out about a title for foreign rights licensing, it's like kind of a miracle, because it would be so much easier for them to just buy something in their own country that they don't have to translate.
They don't have to pay for the translation.
Yeah. And there's just all sorts of extra challenges that come with foreign rights. And yet, even though it's kind of a miracle, we're doing deals all the time. So we're making miracles happen like every day.
Yeah, and this is a bit tangential, but also it's not always about the money. So I think that's something an author should be aware of as well. That there's small countries where an advance might be $700, and if an author isn't aware that that's kind of the industry standard for that market, $700, so and so got $7,000. We really know what the market can bear in each territory. So they should also realize that we know the realistic expectations. Sometimes we have wonderful surprises, but for the most part, we know, XYZ country is roughly going to offer this much on this kind of book. And so because it's not about the money, again, it's a foot in the door, and it's just such an accomplishment to say you've been published in this language. As Margot was saying, it's, sometimes a drop in the ocean to even have that picked up. So realistic expectations is something else that an author should be aware of.
Sure. And speaking of expectations, I thought it would be good, Monica, if maybe you could talk through a successful licensing deal that you've done and, what made it work.
Sure. Well, I'll use a very recent one that I've done. I don't know if I should name names because it's not signed on the dotted line yet, but it is going through. But I think it's a good example. It's a domestic language license. So the indie publisher has already published in English language, and a traditional publisher has now picked up North American rights. And so it shows faith in the book because the book got great reviews. It's already sold in 15 different languages, which myself and Allison, my rights partner, did. And so that book got traction that way. A traditional publisher decided to go for it. It was a really strong advance, and the indie publisher / author is still maintaining, their intellectual property. It's just really been it's going to be licensed for 5 years, which is industry standard. So that's another note that you're not losing the book. You're not giving away your book for life, and your IP is gone. It's just you're licensing something for a period of time. And then the reason it went well is I think transparency is a big key. You have to be 100% honest. You have to negotiate not only with the publisher in question, but with the author and that author's publisher. The publisher in question being the buyer of the license, and make things, follow through quickly, tell that publisher, as in the buyer, what can be expected, what the author's not willing to relinquish, how available the author will be if they want to. In this case, it's going to be a big author that they want to promote through bigger publicity means. So to let them know that the author is available, or it might be the case that they're not. So again, just being very honest, open, and making sure every step of the way, if a mistake is made or you've misspoken, which was also the case in this transaction in one small detail, to correct it and then just continue until everybody's happy, everything's clear. And then you can just celebrate the win and go from there.
And Monica, was this deal just strictly for North American rights, or was the publisher also going to take on?
Yes, it was for North American English language. And then I've also, prior to that, about a year ago, sold it to English language in the UK. So it's a perfect example of how domestic or English language rights can be broken up, and then there'll be two streams of income, and the UK publishes and works in a different way than the US. They're totally, same language, different countries, and different methods of promotion. So it's really exciting to see those kind of neck and neck, and how the book is going to grow and the platform for the author will grow as well. She has a big TikTok presence, so it's again draws from, and it's a fiction, I don't know if I mentioned that, a fiction book. So in that case, it's just good writing, compelling writing, captures it's dark fantasy, dark romantasy, so it's kind of on trend right now. Yeah, so that's, I think, a great example. And then in foreign rights, almost the same thing. We hold auctions if there's more than one publisher interested in a book. So recently I've had a few great auctions. Again, usually auctions are done through co-agents in a particular country, or can be. So you just have to be clear with everybody. This is the deadline being set for the auction date. Make sure you follow through on that exact date. Don't wait a day or two, and just tell everybody what's happening throughout the whole process. So there are no questions or suspicions that you're giving favorability to one publisher over the other.
And is that something that someone would expect on Marketplace, the auctions?
Well, then they would be brought over from Marketplace over to DropCap. Margot, you might want to elaborate on that.
Yeah, so signing up for DropCap Marketplace doesn't entail representation for a couple of reasons. One is we wanted to create opportunities for as many indie authors as possible, and we couldn't necessarily sign on to represent like every indie author that's looking to get into foreign rights. And the other is we noticed that authorpreneurs who maybe chose to self-publish to preserve some autonomy didn't necessarily want to sign an exclusive representation agreement, but still wanted the opportunity to have their book visible in front of rights buyers and see what kind of traction they would get. So DropCap Marketplace is like an excellent way to do that. It's a great first step. And then when and if someone receives an inquiry, they always have the opportunity to use DropCap for representation. And when that happens, they have the option of either having us represent them only for this particular deal or representing that title for all foreign rights, in which case that can be really beneficial sometimes, because if we have inquiry from one country and the author will allow us to kind of run with it, we can use that interest to stoke interest elsewhere. Like Monica was saying, like, what's everyone else doing? If you can sell a book in one territory, like it really helps you sell it elsewhere. It's kind of a snowball.
Okay, so just to make sure I'm understanding, you educate me. So if I'm an author, I can go to DropCap Marketplace, list my book. And if I get interest on a potential rights deal, I can negotiate that myself, or I have the option of getting representation through DropCap.
Yep. And if you had other representation, like if your publisher, like if you were working with a small publisher, a mid-sized publisher who had sub-rights department and they had your rights, you can always direct the inquiry to them.
Okay. So if you're a traditionally published author or a hybrid author, for example, you don't have to be indie to post your book on Marketplace, is kind of what I hear you saying, right? You can still, authors of all stripes can take advantage of the Marketplace.
Yeah, it's just a great like tool for extra visibility. And I think it's most beneficial to indie authors because they are the ones who typically don't have access to the types of infrastructure that would allow for their books to go global, that would allow them to receive offers to license foreign rights for their books. But certainly, like anyone could take advantage of it. Literally anyone can sign up.
Okay. And that's all good to know. And what I want to talk about next, and this is a question that I'm sure a lot of people are thinking about, is, and I'll direct this to Monica first, what trends are you seeing in the marketplace right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. For fiction, as I mentioned earlier, dark fantasy, dark romantasy is trending, but things move really quickly. I mean, for a while during kind of the Bridgerton hype, there was a lot of bodice ripping fiction. There's still some interest there. And like trends, as they are called trends, they don't seem to stay around forever. So it's kind of, you know, for a few years you'll see this and then it'll gravitate to a whole new theme. But I always go back to just really being authentic and true to what you want to publish, what you think you're good at, what you're passionate about, and not necessarily follow trends. It's almost like with fashion, oh, what's everybody wearing? So let's wear the newest thing. I think if you just have a really good book, then that will be the trend in and of itself. So, but in more general terms, in nonfiction, we specialize in I mean, we kind of consider lots of different areas, but the key areas are business, self-help, mind, body, spirit, and some social history, a lot of brain science. Actually, that's a big trend right now. So anything to do with the brain and neuroscience is a big trend. But again, that doesn't mean everybody should go out and write a book on brain health.
Right.
So it goes back to being an expert in your field, and that will always be in vogue because it's something you know about and can speak to in a bigger way. And it's, for nonfiction, it's your career, presumably. So that way you're, hopefully going to be a name in your field, and that will help a lot. So, and then for kids' books, we also work a lot with children's books, and beautiful illustrations are key if you're doing a children's picture book. Illustrations that don't look too American if you want to get into foreign rights. But again, if you love that American kind of sensibility, then that's fine too, but it might just have limitations elsewhere. Yeah, and then also for kids' books, a lot of character development is important, and just following what programs within schools are, if they're talking about mindfulness and kindness and how they approach those themes, just be cognizant of what's happening within the school markets and how they can relate to character development in the books that you're talking about. And there's also a section in the back that's trending now. If you have an expert talk about, if the book's about mindfulness, then an expert, maybe a psychologist or sociologist, will speak to that subject matter in the back of the book that's geared towards parents who are reading to their children. I don't know if, Margot, have I missed anything? I may have.
No, I think you covered it all. I've noticed, because I'm somewhat new to DropCap, I joined in June, and I've learned so much. And I've noticed that the things that seem to perform well in the foreign rights marketplace are often the things that kind of just perform well domestically too. Romantasy is really big in the United States now too. And nonfiction by experts, wellness, self-help, also really big in our market right now. And I don't know what to attribute that to, but I wonder if it has something to do with social media and our book community being global because of the internet. And so if you're like big on TikTok and your audience is all over the world, then the topics and the books you're talking about are going to be popular all over the world.
Yeah.
Fair. And what about resources? So if I'm an author and I've heard this conversation, I'm thinking, okay, maybe my book is good, maybe it's not. I want to know more. Margot, what are some resources that you recommend for authors to dig deeper into this topic?
Yeah, so we do have a guide that I authored for Ally. It's a free guide to kind of foreign rights 101, some key tidbits, a little bit of an overview of, what to expect from the licensing process, and then how to get started with DropCap Marketplace if you're interested. I'm also always happy to talk to authors who want to learn more. So you can reach out through our website, and I'm happy to offer guidance and my perspective. And for our subscribers, something we're working on right now is providing more educational resources. So for the people that are subscribed to DropCap Marketplace, we want to make sure that they're receiving educational content throughout the year that will help them be more successful as authors and entrepreneurs, and help them, beyond even whatever licensing interest they might be getting on the site. We just want them to be as successful as possible in their careers.
Yeah. And thank you, Margot, for mentioning the Ally Guide. I appreciate that. I will. So this is available to Ally members. So if you're an Ally member and you're watching this and you're thinking, oh, that's great, this guide is available for free. It's called A Guide to Getting Started with DropCap Marketplace. And that is in your dashboard. If you log in to Ally, your dashboard, you hover your mouse over approved partners and then scroll down to key partner guides. You can find it there, and you can download it for free if you're an Ally member. And Ally also, I'll give it a plug here because I can't help but do it here. Ally has another book, a guidebook for people who are interested in learning a little bit more about rights licensing, and it kind of dovetails really nicely with this. And it's called "How Authors License Rights," and that's written by our fearless leader Orna Ross. And you can access that by going into publications, and that's in our publications guide. So just had to throw that out there, get the Ally plug. Monica, what about you? Do you have any resources that you would recommend?
I think, and I'm sure authors have access to this if they wanted to. Our industry magazine is called Publishers Weekly. A lot of authors may know about that, but just as you asked, Michael, what's trending, it's a really fun way to see and hear what's going on in the industry. So also around book fairs, there's also a lot of hype, or they'll mention books of note or big deals in the industry. And I think it's just a fun overall view of what's happening. There's an equivalent magazine or online. These are both online now, of course, in the UK called The Bookseller. So same kind of idea, just what's happening within the industry. And I think it's also always just fun to know what's happening in a world that maybe you're just stepping your toe into, but want to know more. I think those are two good resources. And if you're editing, or if you want your manuscript edited, I think there must be so many places that have good editors, copy editors that you can turn to before you hand in your manuscript. So to make sure you're just really confident that your manuscript is correct and accurate, I think that's helpful too.
I would highly recommend Reedsy. As I mentioned at the beginning, I was an editor for 12 years. I worked at HarperCollins and then Penguin Random House. And then I worked for an entertainment company developing literary IP. And that whole time, I also freelanced on Reedsy. So you'll get a lot of wonderful freelancers who freelance full time, but you'll also get a lot of people who currently work at big publishers and know what they're looking for and know how the business works. So I think it's an excellent resource.
Yeah, and I would second that.
Yeah. And I would third that. Friend of mine, she's in fashion. She's just written her first fiction book, and I presented it to one of our publisher clients, and she's now assigned her without necessarily buying or licensing the book. She just said, it's a good story, but it needs a great edit. Would you like to use one of our editors? And then my friend will just pay her independently for that edit. And whether it gets sold or not is a different story, but at least she knows that when it's being presented to the world, it will be a really solid editorial review, and she can go forward with a bit more confidence.
Yeah, and I'll call out to the folks watching that Reedsy is one of Ally's partner members, highly vetted. They offer very good services. So, it's definitely a service that Ally recommends for those who need cover designers and editors and formatters and all of those things. So as we wrap up, Margot and Monica, are there any things that we didn't talk about today that you want to make sure you talk about before we wrap? Anything that just jumped into your head that maybe you think authors should know? I
would just say, with all authenticity, that I think what DropCap is doing is really cool. As I mentioned, I kind of caught the publishing startup bug. I wanted to go work for a company who are innovating and trying to solve a problem in the industry. And I thought, yeah, it is a problem that self-published authors don't really have a way to license their books globally. And this is an amazing tool. And ultimately, the product, your book, is going to determine whether or not you're able to license it successfully, right? Joining DropCap Marketplace is not a guarantee of a foreign rights deal. But if your book is strong, if it has global appeal, if it is in categories that rights buyers are interested in, it will get in front of the right people. And, even if you don't necessarily get a license, it's a very cost-effective, easy way to gauge global interest in your book and get a little bit more data about who may or may not be interested. I think I pay like $170 a year or something for DocuSign that I use like 2 or 3 times a year. And I think this has like even more value than that. And, is not as much. So that's my little plug.
Yeah, and I agree. I think especially our co-agents who use our platform, they just say it's so easy to use, it's so innovative, and they're really pleased with it, and they have fun with it as well. So I think anyone who comes to DropCap will know that these buyers around the world are taking time to look at their book. And also, I think just to let authors and especially indie authors know, publishing can be a long game. So if your book doesn't license in a year, it doesn't mean it never will. We've licensed books that maybe are 5 years old or sometimes even 10, 15 years old. There's also a lot of opportunity for renewals. If the book was strong in the market it's licensed in, then 5 years later, when the book comes up for renewal, that's another source of income because there'll be a new advance negotiated. So just, enjoy the process. And we're so grateful that there's so many creative people out there that we had to build this platform in the first place. So we're thrilled to be working with these great authors and just, be proud of what you've put out in the world and hope that it'll be seen elsewhere in a bigger way.
Awesome. Now, where's the best place for those watching to find out more about you, Margot and Monica?
Well, we have DropCap Marketplace has social media channels. I also have an Instagram where I post about work and publishing stuff, which is at Craft Book Editing.
And Monica?
Yes, I'm on LinkedIn. On our DropCap landing page, we also have blogs, and we write a monthly newsletter. So that then turns into a blog on the landing page. So you can see what we're up to, Allison and I as agents, what we're doing around the world, which is a fun read. And my Instagram tends to be more personal, but you can see what I'm up to, where I'm traveling to, if you like. And those are the key areas, I would say.
All right. And it's dropcapmarketplace.com. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. That's where people can go if they want to sign up for an account and be able to list their books as well.
Yep.
So, okay. Well, this has been a great session. Margot and Monica, thank you for sharing your expertise. And thank you all for watching. This has been Increase Your Profit with Translation Sales. And I hope that this information will be helpful to all of you watching in your careers and hopefully going out there and licensing foreign rights. So with that, thank you for watching and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thanks so much.